We're going to share this mic amongst the SLT members as they answer the question. So, Liz, I'll start with you down here since I think, we're going to introduce ourselves first.
Yes, we are. So let's go ahead and ask each of you to introduce yourselves. We can go in turn, but also to make it interesting, of course, tell your role with World Travel, but also what your favorite destination is. I already know yours. But...
Are we moving them down?
Yes.
I'm Liz Mandarino. I am the president and CEO of World Travel, and those of you that know me all know that Italy is my favorite destination.
I'm Lisa Lundquist. I'm our Vice President of Global Accounts and our global agency partners around the world. And I would have to say France, south of France.
Good afternoon. I am Pam Zager, Executive Vice President of Operations. And that's a really tough question because the globe is such a small place. And I'd have to say New Zealand, for sure.
Hello, everybody again. Ivan Imana, Chief Information Officer. You know, my answer is actually pretty domestic, literally domestic, Hawaii.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Monica Lawrence, and I'm Vice President and Corporate Counsel. And I'm going to have to pick two. I'm going to do a domestic, which is Maine, and an international, which is Scotland. So it's very hard to pick.
I'm Barb Kubler. I'm the Senior Vice President of Client Services, and my favorite destination is Jamaica, because when I go away, I do not want to do anything.
Good afternoon, everyone. Chris Clark. I'm our Vice President of Finance and Controller, and I guess if we're doing the domestic, I'll share with Ivan Hawaii, and then international will be Australia. It was beautiful there.
You stole my answer. Mike Farrell, obviously, we met earlier today, EVP of Business Development. My favorite destination domestically is probably the Outer Banks, and internationally would be, I'll go with Ireland, since you took my answer. I'll go back down here to...
Well, I was going to say you could keep the mic down there and we'll come back this way.
That's all right.
All right. I just reshuffled the cards. Thanks, Mike. All right. So we do have some questions for the SLT, so I'd love to get their feedback on these. So I will start with Liz, since she has the microphone. So tell us about World Travel's response to COVID and how the decisions that were made during the initial period have benefited us and impacted us today.
So we closed our office doors on March the 17th, and Pam Zager and I were the last ones to leave the building. Everyone else had gone home and was doing what they were supposed to do, and we were fighting, kicking and screaming, not wanting to go. We did reluctantly go that day and just said, okay, Pam, we'll see you in 2 weeks. It shouldn't be any longer than that. We'll be, we'll be back in 2 weeks. Let's just muddle through. Well, 2 weeks turned into 2+ years. But the senior leadership team quickly got on the phone together. It was very quickly, and we started to talk about what we need to do, what are the next steps, not knowing, honestly, that it was going to last as long as we did. I mean, it was unrealistic to think that it was going to be 2 weeks, although I really did think it was going to be 2 weeks. It was unrealistic, and so we did have some realists on the phone that were able to say, look, we've got something serious ahead of us. So as a team, led by Jim, because Jim was part of this conversation as well, we collectively decided unanimously to keep our staff. And we kept our staff because we knew the day would come that we were going to need them. And we were watching all of our competitors very quickly lay people off, and by 75%, 80%. And I was getting a lot of calls from other TMCs that they were doing that, and they kept saying to me, Liz, how's World Travel doing it? How's World Travel doing it? And I said, we're just a very strong company. And our people are our most precious asset. That's all there is to it. Without them, we are nothing. And so it was really important for us to keep them, and then keep them busy. We kept them engaged. We had coffee with the CEO. We had, all sorts of different communications that we did. We're an ESOP. We're owners. How do you tell your owners that have skin in the game every single day, okay, you're not very important and you need to go until we figure this out and save, the money. It would have been great to save the money, but it would have been horrible to let any of those people go. And today, that has benefited us greatly because travel has come back with a vengeance. Yes. With a vengeance. And fortunately, we had all of our people to help us get through. And I know that our competitors are struggling to get their people to come back to work, and it's because they've left the industry. They don't feel comfortable in the industry anymore. We all know the industry's here to stay. It's a, you know, it's a global part of our economy. But a lot of people have retired and have left the industry, and we kept our people, and they're still with us, and we are world travel strong.
Awesome. Very good. Thank you, Liz. Lisa, so you are connected to all of our global partners, and can you tell where we are with our global travel and what the other global agencies are experiencing today?
So the good news is people are traveling internationally. Every day we see the numbers go up, and flights are full. And as you heard from our airline partners today, they're adding capacity, and we're thrilled about that. So, and all of you as clients, you know, you're seeing your travelers want to travel more. So the global agencies are doing well for some of the regions. It's come back slower, certainly, than in the US. It was really kind of the floodgates opened a bit when the restrictions got removed a bit, and people could travel more freely across borders within Europe and such. So China, Beijing, Shanghai, still having some problems, certainly with shutdowns and things. But I think that things are certainly ticking up very quickly, just like it has been here in the US, and the future looks really good. So I know that I traveled to both Rome and London in the last couple of months. There were all kinds of people on the streets. It was crowded, flights were full. Even in New York, which I live near New York, a lot of international travels in New York the last several times I've been there. So it feels good.
Very positive news.
Yeah.
Thank you, Lisa. All right, we'll go to Pam. We have multiple questions for you.
Uh-oh, I'm afraid.
So first of all, you have been our statistics guru throughout the entire pandemic, and before that as well, I'm sure.
I've been called worse, George.
Exactly. So tell us about what the data is showing, what ARC numbers are, and you know, how does that compare to the rest of the industry's recovery?
Sure, absolutely. So first, I think we need to kind of take a little step back before we get into the current numbers, because there's an expression that history has a way of repeating itself, right? So early on, as Liz had mentioned, when we were shutting down the office, in our lifetime, we've never had a situation like that where we actually shut down. Now, viruses and not necessarily pandemics, but having viruses around the world is not new. I mean, we had H1N1, we had SARS, et cetera. What was that, back in 2009, 2002, 2003, 2004, and the industry actually grew, even though there was a short setback. There was GDP had a short, they did have a recession, a short recession, not the Great Recession, but before that. But even when it went to its peak, it grew. It recovered and it grew. So that was optimistic, wasn't it? It was like, okay, we'll get through this. The difference was the world didn't shut down. So even though history has a way of repeating itself, what we didn't know was what was new, how that was going to play out, right? Then, of course, it turned into something that we could never even imagine, because then it became not this short-lived, a couple of years just hitting a few different continents. And, I think the worst of that was, a couple 100,000 fatalities versus where we are now in COVID, right? No one could have ever imagined this. But one thing we did learn as we're looking at data is that our industry is very resilient. It is the most resilient industry that is out there, truth be told. And it is the most volatile industry as well, because everything touches it, right? Every industry was hit by COVID, but no industry was hit as hard as travel, right? But this is what's very interesting. The only time in over 20 plus years that the global travel industry did not grow was in 2009, and that was because of the Great Recession. The only one pre-COVID this is. Then COVID hit. This makes that look like nothing. What the numbers back, and I'll never forget it, April 12th, 2020, in the US, it was the hardest hit sales week. We close our airline sales weekly through Airline Reporting Corporation. We were down 98%. 98%. And of course, ARC, who publishes their numbers weekly, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about the current numbers in a few minutes, but they were down in corporate. They broke it out into 3 different verticals. It was corporate, it was leisure, and OTA, and they were down 96%. And of course, I'm like, that's a number we did not want to beat. No, we did not want to beat that one, and we did, unfortunately. And then we started watching. Unfortunately, it stayed like this for a very, very long time. But internally, to what Liz was talking about, we wanted to celebrate those milestones. Every time we had an increase in our transactions, we celebrated them. You know, we couldn't force companies to travel, but one thing we did know is that the only way people were going to get on planes again is if they felt comfortable doing so. Consumer confidence plays a critical role in people getting on airplanes again, right? If people aren't comfortable, they're not going to do it. So the good news is, you know, Chris was my partner in crime, still is my partner in crime every day. If you ever said to me as an executive of the company, I'd be looking at numbers every day. In fact, we look at it twice a day. I'd say, you're on drugs. Well, guess what? We're looking at those numbers twice a day, every day, right? And so at one point in 2020, we started seeing some good momentum. And in fact, at one point, Chris goes, if we keep this up, we actually might be fully recovered. And we're like, yahoo! Then, of course, a surprise. Right? We have another variant. And this is the difference between the Great Recession versus the COVID-19 pandemic. The Great Recession was something systemic, right? The financial market had a flaw, and that flaw broke. It made a break, and they had to fix it. COVID-19 was cyclical. It was a cycle, and even though we didn't know this in 2020, that there would be all these different variants, one thing we did learn really quick is that it was not going to go back to what happened April 12th, 2020. As each variant came out, it took a dip, but it never dipped that far. So that was promising, right? So then it got to a point where at the end of 2021, we're like, we're going to go into December and January, and this is truly recovery. But then it wasn't. Omicron hit, and we dipped again. So as we thought we're ending 2021 at a 60% recovery, trending at that point in time, not on the rolling 12 months, but at that current time, we did not. And then it dropped again. And then, as Liz mentioned, the floodgates opened. And here's where part of the problem was with that, is that, you know, our clients, you didn't know what travel was going to look like. You still really can't say what travel is going to look like for you because you don't know what you don't know, right? And so there were certain things in history that we knew what history showed. We knew that we were going to recover and it's going to be stronger because even after the Great Recession, the great news about that, even though it went for over 2 years, it started at the end of 2007, recovered in beginning of 2009 in the US, and then the globe had the domino effect. But one thing we did know is after that, it rebounded better. International travel grew. People in countries like China and India, you know, that would have a 21% outbound travel was up to 42%. Why? Because low-cost carriers entered the market, right? Technology advanced to what Ivan was saying earlier, is that taking this time to optimize technology to make booking travel and make travels easier. Now, of course, COVID just threw a big wrench into that now. But it's going to get, so one thing we do know, again, as history repeats itself, and we're still in recovery, you know, and part of that is the U.S. still has a lot of restrictions to get back into the U.S. And what's interesting with that is where the U.S. would have multiple airports, which would be the top international airports, has one on the list right now, one, and it's JFK. No L.A., no Chicago, no Atlanta, you know, because it is still difficult to get in the U.S. So it's critically important for full recovery in the market for the U.S. to make it easier and safe, while being safe, to travel. So now, if we look in present time, what is wonderful, and I do believe because we're in a different position than our competitors, not an easy position, it's different, but we're in a different position because we do have our staff. It was difficult for them to get back up because literally our floodgates opened and it was like they had to pick up that volume that they were doing, you know, over 2 years ago. That's not an easy task, right? But they're getting their feet wet and they're doing a good job. Our competitors are at a disadvantage because they don't have the staff and they're trying to get the staff in and they're trying to get them trained and to answer the phones. So we're very, very fortunate with where we are today. But what's also beneficial to that is our recovery, because again, we look every week and we compare it to the Airline Reporting Corporation under a corporate umbrella. We're actually trending pretty consistently now at 10% better than what they're posting our competitors are at recovery. So a round of applause to us for that, because we are super excited for that. And earlier on, what was interesting, if we were at 2% or 3% better, it was like, yahoo! Now that we're at 10%, it's like, whew, it's, of course, we're not breathing yet, but we feel much, much better. I hope that answers your question, George.
Awesome. Perfect. That's great news.
But yes, for sure.
Fortunately, things are ramping up well, so we're very happy about that. And I think we're all pretty much tired of talking about the pandemic, so let's hope that can just kind of ride off into the sunset.
Oh, yes. I should add one more. There's another very positive trend is pre-COVID, because one thing that we learned in 2007, 8, 9 was the airlines didn't react as quick as they should have, right? And so, again, you take lessons learned, right? So this time, what happened? They took that capacity quick. The minute that the globe shut down, those airline seats were gone. We saw it on the United slide, right? It's airy, isn't it? It was very airy. If this trending continues the way it is right now, by mid-year this year, the airline capacity globally will exceed 100 million, and that hasn't happened since pre-COVID.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's good.
So good news.
Great. Thank you, Pam. Appreciate that. So Ivan, even though you already covered some of our things, there's still more to talk about, I'm sure. So again, we learned how great World Mobile is going to be, and I know you have a lot of other innovations in your technical bag of tricks. So can you kind of highlight some of those?
Well, we did touch on a couple of those. Thank you for the questions. But really, as you can see, innovation, what we're focused on is mobile first. But beyond that is, there's two key constituents that we are looking to address. You got the end user, and then you got the people that manage travel. And how do we make that experience the best possible experience for the people that manage travel and that are the end user? And part of that, and the baseline for this, as I talked about our proprietary profile system, is how do we take that information throughout the complete ecosystem we have at World Travel and bring timely information. So, things like about, hey, you didn't book a hotel. We know based upon your profile, your transactional activity, the company's preferred suppliers, policies, that these three options match all those things, and we deliver them mobily, and so that end user can book their hotel. Because we all know hotel attachment is a challenge for all of us because you always book your air for first, not always, but predominantly, right? And then you figure out where you're going to go from a hotel perspective based upon the meetings and what you have going on. So that's an example. The other things related to, we talked about, the partnership as to we get in the bigger part of T&E. How do you capture that information related to expense beyond just car, air and hotel related to virtual cards? How do we enable that to be a complete experience, saying, hey, we can apply that virtual card to your lift to the airport. By the way, that virtual card applies to your air ticket. By the way, we'll check you in. It becomes a virtual card. It's in your wallet at the hotel. We've got some money on there for you to go out to dinner. You've got some money on there to grab a cup of coffee, and then we'll give you information back for your Lyft ride home. That's an example where you think about candidate travel, where it's some low-hanging fruit, I think, as to what we can deliver, but make the management of that so much easier. And so that's where we're excited about where we're going on virtual cards. The other things that we're looking at is we're expanding reporting and how do we apply artificial intelligence. We're having conversations about this. It's not being rolled out yet, but I think some low-hanging fruit for artificial intelligence in our industry is pre-trip approvals, right? So when you think about what happens on expense tools, I don't know if you guys are familiar, there's a lot of artificial intelligence now applied to expense, right? So the thing is you build a model, you build rules associated, and so now you're truly only looking at a true exception, right? Because my past experience is when you have a pre-trip approval product is you send it to the people that are the busiest in the company. They look at it, they're busy, and they hit yes every time. And I look at the metrics and look, in the last 6 months, you have not denied one trip. Do you still want pre-trip approval? Yes, absolutely. So, when I think about, hey, what's some low-hanging fruit here? Let's apply some modeling, artificial intelligence, build that modeling specific to you and your policies so that when you can tell that approver that, hey, when you get that information, it means something because that approval process is being automated. It's looked at everything because you put it in there for a reason. You want it looked at. Now it's just being looked at by artificial intelligence. But now when you get it, there's really an anomaly going on. So those are what as we continue to build upon that. and move these things throughout our whole ecosystem. I want to, we talk about platform as a service. We brought that up, in a prior symposium. And really what I want to make sure is we can bring these little wins all the way throughout the ecosystem, so they're the building blocks to just changing that whole experience that both the travel manager, arranger has, but also the end user. And those are just some examples we're looking at having down the road. And then the last push I'll put out here, George, is that we're looking for some beta volunteers for automated real-time hotel rate audits. So if you're out there and you want to participate in that, we really, we put some information out there. We didn't get a great response. I think it has value because, as my past experiences, hotel audits are systematic, meaning that they're done like every quarter, every 2 quarters, and you all know that hotel rates drop off, maybe the wrong season rates in there. And so for every reservation, we think we're very close to having a solution. We'll give you an audit and say, hey, that reservation's not right. So you can go back to your supplier immediately, and our team here at World Travel, will push that to say, hey, let's correct this, because, if you've gone a quarter and realize that your rates have dropped off or are incorrect, to recover that is a much harder task than to recover 3 or 4 reservations. So those are things that, if you're interested, definitely we're looking for some beta users, so please reach out to Natalie and your account manager to get that going. So those are just some examples, George, of what we're looking down on in innovation. But it's how do we bring these services consistently throughout our ecosystem? Because, as I mentioned it before, I think we're in a very unique spot. Whether you're a travel arranger or in traveler, we kind of can predict time, because we know tomorrow you're going to be at a location. You're going to be staying at this location, and you're coming back. So let's look at that complete experience, and how do we make that better because you're traveling for work or a combo.
Excellent, Ivan. Thank you. I think we're all very excited to see these things come to fruition. It's great direction. So on to our newest member of the SLT, Monica. Question for you. How does World Travel look for our people? What programs are in place? And how are we investing in our employee owners?
Well, we do a lot to invest in our employees and show that we truly value them as owners. We have multiple initiatives. The first one I'll mention is we have an in-house mentoring program that we developed, and I'm going to give a shout out and all the kudos to Tracy Mergis, who is one of our vice presidents, who spearheaded the program, and it's been extremely successful. It's been extremely valued by our employees, and basically, there's a questionnaire for people that are potentially interested in being mentors, asking them things like, why do you think it's important? What can you bring to the table to mentor some of our employees? And then the mentees are invited and they meet, and I think that they, from the feedback that I've gotten, it's extremely well received. It's extremely beneficial. I think for both the mentors and the mentees, I think everyone gets a lot out of it. And right now we have about 30 employees who are participating in that program, so it's definitely popular. We also participate in the GBTA Ladders Mentorship Program, and that program has volunteers, executive travel people who will, donate their time, give their time to people in the travel industry that are, more up and coming and interested in developing their professional skills in the travel industry. And we have mentors, mentees, as well as alumni advisors who participate in that program. And it's exciting. There's a lot of energy around it, and so that's a really great, I think, way that we can help our employees with that. And then moving on to a new initiative that we are undertaking right now, and the goal is to roll it out in September, is a new DEI initiative. And that is really because we realize that it's the socially responsible thing to do, but also recognizing that a diverse and inclusive workforce makes us a better company. It's, better ideas, different points of view. It's both the right thing to do, but it also is good for the company. And I also think that the employees appreciate that. Like I said, that's in development right now, but we are planning to roll that out in the fall. And then finally, we are also undergoing a sort of revamp of our corporate responsibility policy and program, and that deals with a multitude of things. Sustainability, of course, that is definitely a key focus and important to the company and our employee owners. But also, things like giving back to the community, volunteering, and things of that nature. And that, like I said, is, we're sort of revamping it at this point, and my expectation is that that will sort of get relaunched by the end of this year.
Great. Thank you, Monica. So Barb, it's your turn.
Okay.
So since we did not lay off or furlough any of our employees, and you had a full team of account managers during a non-busy time, many of those who are in the room here, how did you keep them busy?
We never stopped being busy. I think it was one of our busiest times, and I just want to shout out to all of you. It is so wonderful seeing everybody here. If I haven't hugged you all yet, I will be before you all leave, because I'm sitting up here thinking, I didn't see Tom over there, and I didn't get to see Steve. So I am so excited to see everybody, so I did have to say that. We stayed really busy from the day that we shut down and the world shut down. The team, and I'm going to shout out to my account managers and Lisa's account managers. We have been so proud of them. They came together and they worked so hard during the pandemic. And our team was used to always traveling, and they were gone, 3 days out of the week, traveling to see all of our customers. So when the world shut down, it kind of changed their job. And they became more consultative, which is what they've always wanted to do. It doesn't always give them the time. And over the past 2 years, they've learned to go back to the job that they loved, and which is so exciting to see, because it's like a new birth of account management. And we took care of the unused tickets, was like Pam had said on her statistics. You can imagine how many unused tickets we were doing and what we had to do to get them loaded into the system and to report to all of you what your unused tickets were. And now, how are we utilizing them all? Whether it was using UATP cards, or we were able to get refunds, whatever it was we were able to do for you, we did. And then during our reviews, there wasn't much numbers to show you. Some of our clients didn't travel once for a year. Some of them still really haven't traveled. So it was like, okay, well, what are we gonna work on for you to see what happens when travel does come back? So Ivan, we talked about our products with Natalie. So we really promoted our products with all of you, so that you knew what products have. So when you're ready to travel, this is how you're going to get there, from the time you leave the airport or leave your home to the time you come back. And so we spent a lot of time training and listening to a lot of webinars and working with Natalie and her team on our products. So we became more education. It was more educational for our team as well, learning how to resell some things. We worked on destination messaging. That was huge, because all of a sudden you said you can't travel anymore. And those people were trying to get onto Concur, so we put messages on, hey, you can't travel, or you need senior leadership approval. So we did a lot with almost every customer. I think we did some type of destination messaging. We also we still continued our quarterly reviews, just in a totally different manner. And the best part, I think is, we got to visit you typically 3 times, 4 times out of the year, if not more. But now we saw you on Teams calls on a weekly basis, which was exciting. So we got to know your families, we got to know your dogs, we got to know your cats and babies. And it gave us a total different relationship that we will continue to go on because we didn't miss out on any of that. But we are so ready to get out there. And I went down to Richmond last week with Robin and got to visit a couple of our customers down in Richmond. And it was just so nice just to sit there and talk about this, crazy past 2 years. But we've been, we're reinventing ourselves as account management. But I'm so proud of the team and all of you for sticking in there with us and being on all of our team calls and engaging with us. So thank you.
Awesome, Barb. Thank you. You have a great team. Okay, Chris. So you're responsible for handling our cash flow, and thank you for that, by the way. So how did you keep the lights on during all of this pandemic?
Well, first, made sure that Pam and Liz turned the lights off when they were leaving the Exton building the last day, so we didn't have to pay for the electricity. But yeah, so it was a challenge. The biggest thing with cash, and you may have heard this, cash is king. I mean, all companies, we need cash to survive. Many companies, many of our competitors were sort of like Mike's calculator trick, where their cash balances every week they were swiping, they were losing a digit out of their cash balances every week because they weren't prepared. World Travel went into the pandemic in a much better position than those companies were because of the culture that had been built over 30 years of building the company. We were always fiscally prudent in what we were spending our money on. If there's something we need to spend the money on, we would do it, but we were not wasteful of our spend. So we entered the pandemic in a very advantageous position, especially compared to our competitors. But as the pandemic started going on, our revenues from our clients and our traveling, that obviously dropped to zero, as Pam mentioned, so we need other ways. One of the ways was the government programs that were out there. So Mark, our CFO, and I became close personal friends with the IRS, calling them literally on a weekly basis, hey, we submitted this form in, where's our refund, where is that? And I became first name basis with some of the IRS agents, calling them frequently enough, and eventually that did come through, so that was able to help us. But it was very key for us to know, okay, we know what the government's going to be able to help us. That wasn't going to be enough. But then what were we doing in the transactions, and where can we see our cash being in 60, 90 days so we could better plan ahead? And that was where getting into the tracking of the transactions became a very important part of what we're doing. And quite honestly, it's still what I'm doing today is going through and seeing where we're at, because that gives us a much better idea of where we're headed in the future. So we can better plan, hey, we think in 6 months the cash is going to be this, so we can plan accordingly, because you don't want to be reactive, we want to be proactive in our cash planning. The other part was working with our vendors. Each person on the SLT here has different vendors that they were really responsible for managing it, and when the pandemic hit, you need to start calling these vendors and see what kind of arrangements can they do to help us out during this time. Because a lot of our vendors were not in the travel industry, were not as severely impacted as we were. So each of the group up here, there were a couple different vendors that they will call and say, hey, they're willing to do with us. Maybe it was deferring payment for 90 days. Maybe it was reducing their charge to us 50% over the next 6 months. Every little bit these different vendors were able to do and help was a savings to us. One of mine on my list was our landlord for our leisure office up in Gilbertsville. I called him every couple of months, keeping them updated of where we're at. No, we're still closed. We hoping to open soon, but we're still not open. And he was fine with that. He's like, just make sure we keep in touch. And when we finally reopened the offices in April of 21 to open our leisure office, I said, we're open, and the rent check's gonna be in the mail. And they were fine with that. I said before, cash is king. Communication then has to be queen. It was communicating, keeping in touch with these vendors, making sure this is where we're at. And then when we made commitments to those vendors, we stuck with them. So Barb might say, hey, this vendor wants to do this. I made sure that, hey, we make sure if we committed to make a payment on the 15th of the month, that payment was going out the door, because we needed the trust. We are nothing if companies don't have trust and faith in us. We needed to make sure and maintain that trust. So it was making sure, juggling, okay, we're doing this payment on the 15th, and then, okay, then, Ivan, I can pay your guy on the 20th. And we would work back and forth on that, making sure we could go through and navigate our way through that when cash was at a premium. As we've come out of the pandemic, but now we're starting to be able to get more caught up and handle things in a more normal manner. Leisure. And the final part I would say is when we are traveling again, and it was working with our clients and sometimes our account managers. There's some account managers I met last night and today that I haven't seen in 3+ years, but I have spent plenty of time with them on emails and saying, hey, can you check with your client XYZ? You know, they're a little bit behind in their payments. We need to get them doing that. So it's making sure that those payments are coming in from our existing clients and continuing to keep ourselves current that way. Jim's not here now, but Jim and I would talk most Fridays. He would call me and say, hey, how are we doing with cash? Where are we at with cash? Are we in good shape and all that? And I say, hey, Jim, we had a good cash day. We collected so much. His simple comment, do it again. Jim, if I couldn't guarantee that on Monday, I would, but we can't always control that. But that would sort of be his mindset is, all right, we did great, let's do it again the next day. And we're trying to do the best we can with that.
Good.
That's it.
Excellent. Thank you, Chris. It really is inspirational what has been done to keep us solvent and to get us here today stronger than ever. So thank you. Last but not least, Mike, question for you.
Yes.
All right, what trends are you noticing in your conversations with prospective clients, and what is the volume of the clients looking for a new TMC during the approach of the endemic phase?
Yeah, the conversations have been great. Similar to what Barb was mentioning, that her account management team was busy. We were extremely busy as well on the sales and marketing side, because Jim and I had a conversation, and he said, when others are fearful, it's time for you to be aggressive, and when others are aggressive, it's time for you to be fearful. So a lot of people went into the pandemic with a lot of fear of what was going to happen, and those decisions led to what has been mentioned earlier, 50, 60, 70% layoffs. We went in it very aggressively. As you know, we've grown organically through our history. We've never bought or merged with another agency, and I can't say we haven't looked. We've obviously had those conversations, but it just isn't who we are. What we decided to do during the pandemic was acquire talent. So there were several individuals who were either let go or on the verge of being let go of other agencies. Two that I want to mention here. One is James Keller. He is our Vice President of Meetings and Events. I've worked with Keller, that's what he goes by in the industry, for a long, long time. He called me up on January 4th, I believe, 2021, and within 2 weeks, saying that he had just got let go by his agency, and within 2 weeks he was a World Travel employee because he was talent that we needed to acquire. Laura Capicioni is another one, our Vice President of Business Development, came to us as a global sales manager from a competitor because of a reduction in her own salary that was north of 75% reduction, and the fear of just being let go and at any day. And so she started with us as a global sales manager and has moved through the department, and now serves as our Vice President of Business Development, working day to day with our great sales team. That many of them are here today. She works hand in hand with them. So I know I didn't answer your question yet, George. The anatomy of the customer that's calling us is calling us because of all the things that were mentioned here, that they have a lot of pain points now, and some of you have recently called us and joined a lot of pain points because they're with a mega agency and they haven't seen their account manager in 18 months. Or their travelers are calling to try to get to an agent, and they're waiting 90 minutes online to try to get to an agent at 2 o'clock in the afternoon without a storm going on. And it is ridiculous, the stories that we're hearing. The one I loved was, I'm calling you because I asked my current TMC for a customized report, and they told me it would be 7 months. And we said, well, why did they tell you it would be 7 months? They said, oh, well, they did admit to us why it would be 7 months. It's because they just bought another agency, and they're too busy. Their technology team is too busy incorporating and merging the technologies from the focus on custom reporting at this time. So these stories that are coming to us are like candy to a baby. It's really, really good. Makes our efforts a little bit easier because we're able to solve those pain points. The anatomy, I say this all the time to potential customers in sales presentations. You know what? You look like a lot of our customers, and that's what we want. We make a decision as a sales team whose bid we're going to participate in and whose we won't, because some customers are not a good fit for us, and we identify that early on in the process and don't spin our wheels trying to bring them on. But those that look like you, we talk to them as frequently and as often as possible and share the stories that we have had successes with your programs, share those similar stories to let them know that World Travel can be an answer for them. Deb just came over to me at lunchtime showing me a verbal that she got that we've been working on for years, or not for years, for months. Sorry, Deb, not years. and this customer truly, in the email, the great email that Deb read to me, truly wants to do business with us and wants to be a partner with us, and that's who we go after. That's who we look to partner with. We don't want someone that's not going to be fun to work with. We don't want somebody that is beyond our wheelhouse. We say no to that. We don't want somebody that is doesn't have a good culture fit with World Travel. And we identify that early on in the process, and that's why I think we're really successful in the sales process, meaning the ratio, because we're looking for customers that will be a very good culture fit. So I'll just close out with the one comment, and that is many times your account managers will reach out to you and say, the sales team is bothering me again, and we need a reference for ABC Company. This is a heartfelt thank you to you, because we can tell them about World Travel all day long and say, hey, we're great. But when you tell them we're great, it makes a world of difference. It makes a ton of difference. So I know it takes up your time. I appreciate those moments, to borrow John's term. I appreciate those moments that you spend with them, because it helps us tremendously to build our organization, to help cash flow, to keep our agents busy, to have our account managers out visiting clients. It helps us keep the wheels in motion. So a heartfelt thank you from all of us to you for that. I'll just close with this, because I want to thank everybody here. My dad gave me some great advice when I was little. He said, if you want to be successful in life, hang out with people that are smarter than you. And I found that role, and I have there's other members of the senior leadership team that are running their departments and a lot smarter than I am. And it's been a huge, huge success for us during the pandemic, because we like each other. We meet regularly. We meet every week virtually, and then once a month in person. And we've been doing that because we've stayed connected to help guide and steer and learn from each other and figure out what's the next step or what's the next chapter. So thank you to all of you. I'd ask that everybody give them a round of applause, if you could, please. Before we step off, because we have a few minutes, I'll help facilitate. Zorian, you have the next couple minutes off. I'll help facilitate. Does anybody have any questions?
All the way in the back.
All the way in the back. Here I come. I got my
Take a little
sneakers
run.
on. That's why. George, can you use that microphone up there for the answers?
Maybe.
If you could, state your name and your company and who your question is for, if it's just in general.
I'm Pam Bauer from Woodstream. We're located in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. That's where our corporate office is, but our company is international. My first question, well, first, I wanted to comment, kudos to all of you for your focus on ESG and DEI. That is something that is very important to our company. And also, my first question, I guess, would be for Ivan. Is there any possibility in these next upgrades that you're doing to possibly integrate and partner with a car service or a limo service for travel from a home base to like the airport, things like that?
It's a good question. It's something probably we should look at, right? Related is just like we have integration to the shared economy. There is information in the mobile app that I didn't get into demo that does tell you about the different car services, but it's not dynamic like the rideshare options. But it's definitely have my information. It's definitely something to look at as to how we can do that, because honestly, a lot of that travel is for specific car service.
Right, we use Black Lane, which is a global limo service, because I am a travel arranger for our executive team, and we're getting away from, what are the two driving? Uber and Lyft. We're getting away from using them as much as car services. My next question, I think, is for Barb. What do you recommend saying to employees who refuse to use the World Travel Concur app to book travel? They keep going back. I'm serious, this happens, and it's some of my executive team members. And they just keep going to their Delta app or their United app, or they might go to the Marriott app because they feel in their mind that they can get what they want easier.
First, you have to change your policy to state and mandate that they must use World Travel. One of the things that we did, and I don't think I mentioned it during my presentation, was we have a travel policy advisor. So it does go in there and allows you to change your verbiage to lenient, to mandate. So that is something that we should look at for you, because really that's where it starts. And also your executives have to be, they want to be part of it, because if your executives aren't mandating it as well, you're not going to get that. So we find from our customers that Mike brings on that and his team that are they're not consolidated. That's a difficult piece, because we have got to reach that executive suite to say you mandate that we use World Travel, or you're going to have that going off. So that is, I know that a lot of people in here have that same issue, but you really have to just push it from the senior leadership down and change your policy.
Because that's what we did do, is we did have a mandated policy. Everybody had to sign it. They read it and understand and agreed to it. But when it comes to the executive level and the VPs of our company, they tend to do what they want to do.
Yeah.
So if you I see someone else has something to add.
I just want to add to that, and I'll talk loud. The first time they have to call, the airlines in the room, the airlines, when something goes wrong and they're not calling our team, that's usually when we win them over, right, Pam?
Oh, yes.
Excellent. And for those of you looking for a great black car service, Mike Beretta from Metropolis will be happy to speak to you on the way out. Does a great job. Any other questions? All right. I have a question for each of you that will close this out. One answer to this question, left to right. Who's going to win the Super Bowl next year?
Is there any other choice but the Eagles?
The Eagles.
The Eagles.
The Green Bay Packers.
New England Patriots.
The Jets or Giants, I'll take either.
The Pittsburgh Steelers.
And George?
Oh, that's a tough call. I'm going to say the Vikings are going to have a good year.
I liked his reaction. Yeah. All right. Thank you very much. We'll give them another round of applause as they exit the stage.